History is filled with moments that could have changed everything. What if Napoleon had won at Waterloo? What if the Cuban Missile Crisis had turned nuclear? Or what if Britain had fought the Vietnam War instead of the United States? Let's rewind history. After World War II, France tried to reclaim its colony of Indochina. But the Vietnamese independence movement, led by communist leader Ho Chi Minh, refused to back down. Years of brutal fighting followed. Then, in 1954, came the disaster at Dien Bien Phu. French forces were crushed, and Vietnam was split in two, the communist North and the anti-communist South. In our timeline, America slowly stepped into the conflict. First advisors, then weapons, then hundreds of thousands of troops. But in this alternate history, America never fully commits. Instead, Britain takes the lead. It's 1965, and inside Downing Street, alarm bells are ringing. British leaders fear that if Vietnam falls to communism, the rest of Southeast Asia could follow. The famous domino theory is impossible to ignore. So Britain makes its decision. And suddenly, British soldiers are marching into the jungles of Vietnam. Now, unlike the Americans, Britain actually had experience fighting communist insurgencies in Asia. During the Malayan Emergency between 1948 and 1960, British and Commonwealth forces successfully defeated guerrilla fighters using intelligence, stealth, and population control. Not overwhelming force, not endless bombing. Precision. So in Vietnam, the British approach would look very different. Instead of huge search and destroy missions, small SAS patrols would move silently through the jungle. Gurkha units would ambush enemy supply routes. Australian and New Zealand troops would support key operations alongside British regulars. Helicopters would still be used, but nowhere near the scale seen in the American War. And massive B-52 bombing campaigns? Unlikely. Britain simply didn't possess America's industrial firepower. Rather than flattening entire regions, British commanders would focus on controlling villages and cutting the Viet Cong off from civilians. This strategy had worked in Malaya. There, the British relocated hundreds of thousands of civilians into heavily guarded settlements, barbed wire fences, watchtowers, armed patrols. Harsh? Absolutely. But these protected villages also brought electricity, schools, clean water, and medical care. The idea was simple. Separate the insurgents from the population, and the rebellion weakens. In Vietnam, Britain would probably attempt something similar. But there was one major problem. The Viet Cong weren't isolated to one ethnic group or one region. They were deeply rooted across South Vietnamese society. Farmers, workers, students, even government officials secretly supported them. That made the conflict far more dangerous. British troops would constantly face ambushes, hidden tunnels, and guerrilla attacks launched without warning. And unlike America, Britain wouldn't have millions of troops to rotate into the war. Its army was smaller, its economy weaker, and public patience limited. National service had already ended in Britain by the early 1960s, so the government would rely mostly on professional soldiers and volunteers. That means fewer troops, but possibly less public outrage at home. No massive draft protests, no burning draft cards, no Woodstock-era rebellion. Instead, opposition would grow slowly. Questions would begin echoing through Parliament. How long can Britain afford this war? How many lives are worth losing in Southeast Asia? And most importantly, can this war even be won? Militarily, Britain may have performed better in some areas than the United States. Fewer civilian casualties, less destruction, better coordination between soldiers and local authorities. But even the best counterinsurgency tactics may not have changed the final outcome. Because North Vietnam had something incredibly powerful on its side: patience. The North Vietnamese and the Viet Cong understood that they didn't need to win every battle. They simply needed to survive long enough for Britain to grow tired of the war. And eventually, that's exactly what happens. By the early 1970s, the British economy is struggling, political pressure is rising, and support for the war is collapsing. Prime Minister Harold Wilson finally announces a withdrawal. British troops leave Vietnam, and soon after, Saigon falls. North Vietnam wins the war. South Vietnam disappears from the map. The Vietnam War fought by Britain would probably have been quieter than America's war. Less bombing, less destruction, fewer troops, but perhaps the same ending. Because sometimes history isn't decided by who fights the war, but by whether the war could ever truly be won in the first place.